But I'm playing the part of the librarian. It's the first time ever I got to play the part of the librarian. So Catherine started this series of bringing in faculty to talk to you about what it is that they do outside of the classroom. This month we have Funlola coming. Funlola joined us this past year as our teaching fellow. First one that we have in this new program that allows us to bring in an artist and educator to work with us for 2 years to try to teach some of our curriculum and learn about that, and to propose new classes or develop new classes and learn about that. It's an opportunity to build teaching experience, which is a kind of hard thing to do in higher ed sometimes. So we've been absolutely thrilled with what Funlola's done so far, and I think the fact that you're all here means that you've also been thrilled. So I don't want to take more time, but come on in, sit over here, and thank you.
Hello, is the microphone working? Okay. I mean, I can't tell, so I'm just gonna yell. So thank you for coming to my talk, What Next? That's what it's called. And I have cool animations in my slideshow. Actually, give me 1 second. Is this gonna work if I do it this way? Or are you just gonna see all of my notes? Yep, you're gonna see all of my notes. Cool. Well, that's exciting. Does anybody know how to do it? Okay. Well, I'll just talk, and I have an idea. Don't worry about this. Just give me 1 second.
Get another version up.
Oh yeah. Always bring a backup is the lesson here. Yep. Just bear with me 2 more seconds. And just pretend like everything's fine when you feel flustered, you know. Chit chat, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that's pretty sick.
Yeah. All right. So, what I want to do today is a different kind of presentation. Since it's that time of year, I'd like to share my experience of leaving the comforts of the academic setting and once again being thrust into the cold realities of the art world. Just kidding. I'm being a little dramatic, but I do want to share my experience. It's intimidating, but it's also fine when you are somewhat prepared and you've been thinking about it. So I went to Memphis College of Art, another MCA, RIP. It doesn't exist anymore. It was a small school where everyone knew everyone. And I had a lot of professors who encouraged experimentation. Really, they were just kind of weird. But I thought that was great. So I'm telling you about my grad school experience, basically. I took 8 years off of school between undergrad and graduate school, and my most exciting job was making waterfowl and turkey decoys for a company that was based in Memphis, Tennessee. Is where I learned how to make silicone molds, cast and pour plastic, carve plastic as well, and build forms in plasticine clay. Unfortunately, I can't show you any of the work because it's top secret, and apparently hunting decoy companies are like, I don't know, paranoid, and they get ripped off all the time. So I'm just going to start with my grad school work. So this is the first piece that I made in grad school after some research and experimentation. I realized that I had never actually made art jewelry before, and that was the kind of like the program that I was in. I was surrounded by art jewelers, and it felt a little bit intimidating. So I was basically just trying to catch up on what I thought that I had missed out on. Keep forgetting that I have to click twice. I was investigating my relationship with my hair as I started growing it out. I was just seeing where this broad idea would take me. I didn't want to put too much pressure on myself by deciding what I wanted to focus on so soon and into school. So I explored fabrication of form, including my own hair, like working with my own hair. The brooch format was especially appealing to me because it has a long history of being a signifier for one's identity. And I was excited by the idea of using my own hair as a way to leave a mark, literally and metaphorically. So I started thinking about creating drawings using my hair and going back to what I started with within that first brooch piece that I just showed. I was also exploring the idea of using scraps and reclaiming their preciousness. So here I made my own Britannia silver alloy and forged this bobby pin. I used scraps from 18 karat yellow gold dust to highlight the single curl. It was a way of calling attention to things that get discarded or forgotten, and I wanted to draw those parallels with the way that black hair is often seen in the world. Although I was enjoying figuring out how to fabricate intricate mechanisms in jewelry, I didn't feel like I wanted to focus on that in school necessarily. So I kept going with the hair work because I was kind of unsure of what I wanted to do, but I decided to focus on object making. I knew I was interested in surreal objects, and I enjoyed fabricating metal, so I began taking familiar objects and remaking them in the way that I saw in my head. Sometimes the pieces were blown up in scale or non-functional. They became objects with stories imbued in them. So I wanted to photograph them that way within their context. I also was photographing them on boring white paper, but you need those for when you're applying for things. But that kind of got me thinking about how much I enjoyed work that was based off of a narrative and something that told a story. Without these narratives, my work felt dead and sterile to me. So I would make something. So I wanted to make something that it felt alive. So I would make something and then sort of start talking to it or listening, letting it tell me what it wanted to be, where it wanted to exist. And that is how I came to my thesis work, Slippery Spaces. It's the umbrella in which all of my work exists, and my current work. And it's an in-between world, a queer space, the liminal space of being. I explore my experiences as an immigrant, fading memories, and the joy and adventure of building sanctuaries in the mind. Kind of like the way I would play with my two brothers as a kid. I rediscovered stone carving and combined it with my new favorite form of metalworking, which is electroforming. I was able to carve and sculpt forms in wax and be left with the skin of the original, sort of like how memories work. It felt freeing to work in an unpredictable and less structured way for me, because I kind of feel like jewelers and metalsmiths tend to be very focused on precision. And even though that can be fun, it's not that exciting to me. I don't really like measuring things. And so I installed my thesis work with these ugly paintings in the background. You know, it's not really something I thought of beforehand, but I was like, oh, I should have figured somebody's work was going to be in the way. But it still felt like I was searching for something. Although I didn't feel like I came to a conclusion with my thesis work, I felt like grad school, you know, sort of helped me plant a seed for potential in myself and, you know, in my practice. And I also cried a lot because that's what grad school does to you. But, you know, I think I would have felt completely lost if I had exhausted the ideas that I had started out with. You know, I was glad to come out with a solid body of work and one that I could continue working on. So after seeing the way that people interacted with my work, I knew that I was getting closer to how I wanted them to experience it. Texture, touch, and play was very important to me. Or it still is. And that led me to my solo exhibition. Through the grad school connections and my awkward charm, I proposed a solo show at Brooklyn Metalworks, and they said yes and let me do whatever I wanted with the space, which was pretty incredible. So I could finally create a space that felt immersive on a low budget for me because, you know, I don't have a lot of money. But the orange was a reference to the red soil that my brother and I played with and built towers of dirt as a kid. It was intensified to create a space that felt dreamlike and sacred. And I filled it with all these objects. At night, you could see the orange glow coming from the window, and it was wild and eerie, which I loved. Yeah, again, the surreal is a mode in which I feel comfortable exploring my ideas. You know, a lot of my pieces are transportive, and this one in particular is based off of 3 giant calabash pots that we had in our Lagos home. You know, my brother and I would kind of spend quite a long time screaming into the pots. But it was, you know, it's because of the sound of the echoes. It's sort of like, you know, you can hear the ocean or whatever. But they always felt kind of magical, even though they were just these objects. And of course, they were like decorated with like traditional Yoruba designs. So I called this piece Ailokmin, which translates into infinity. The techniques that I use are rooted in craft. So, you know, this piece is sort of referencing carving, but it's carving in a specific way. So I took a linoleum sheet and carved into it, and then took a mold off of that, and then poured pewter directly into the mold at different levels. It all sort of came about by accident, the way that it looks, just because I was just playing around in the studio. And, you know, that's kind of important to me. It's like if I'm not discovering things or if I'm not having fun, then it doesn't really feel like work. It doesn't feel like it's exciting. I just sort of feel like I'm recreating or reproducing things that have already been done. And maybe I am producing something that's already been done, but it feels exciting to me. So, you know, I was thinking of these pieces and these techniques as, you know, combining with my ideas. Like, I was carving to remember. I was assembling navigators to guide me. I was chiseling to reveal. And braiding vessel-like forms to contain. So all within the slippery space umbrella. And you can see that hair is still an important part of my work. I was happy to continue investigating black hair, especially in the context of Yoruba culture, because that's what I'm most familiar with. And excitingly, this piece was collected by the National Ornamental Metal Museum in Memphis in December last year, so it's like the first time that's ever happened for me. I really like melting metal, so I do it every chance I get. Basically, it's one of those things where your process is sort of linked with how you experience the world. As a child, I would try to melt things and build things out of dirt and clay, and we had toys too, but mostly it was like being outside and being in my mother's garden, things like that, what fed my soul. So the liquid qualities of metal are really what I enjoy. To me, they feel mesmeric, allowing my viewer to be transported into the portals that I create. And I would say that storytelling is really important to me just because of the way that I grew up, but also the oral traditions in Yoruba culture. Everything that's been passed down up until colonialism was not necessarily written down. It was all told by ancestors would tell their children, the elders would tell their kids, and passed on the traditions like that. So I also started thinking about how I could relate that to my work. In the same way that I believe that jewelry becomes activated by the body and our interactions with it, I believe that we can activate objects and our surroundings with conversations and words. I think about the low center table in the home that I grew up in Lagos. It's marked with conversations that my family and I shared. More metaphorically, not literally marked with scratches, but those stories that my family and I shared, the tales that my brother would read, by candlelight because there's probably not any power. All of that stuff feels really special and exists in a special place in my mind. So I'm just sort of recreating those things and trying to rebuild them as I feel more distance from my culture and where I grew up. So you can sort of see back to that carved linoleum. These are formed in copper, electroforming and fabrication. I'm sort of referencing deterioration in this piece, or not sort of, but somewhat literally. But what I enjoy about working with installation is it allows me to revisit work and place the work in different contexts. So this piece originally was on a form that was sitting in space. Now it's on this curved wall. I get the opportunity to sort of see how my work changes and takes on new life when it responds to a new setting. Some detail. I actually came to this work by, I think it was another happy accident in the studio. I was pouring wax into the mold that I had made, and I think I had taken it out too soon, so that it was still sort of warm, and as I was pulling it out, it started to tear. And I was just like, oh wow, that looks really cool. I'm gonna go with that. And as I was thinking, and just like sitting with the work and writing about it, I sort of started to see them as almost like book pages, which again relates back to storytelling and the act of my brother reading all these books to us. And finally, this is my first ongoing piece In 2020, I began making steel curls as a meditation and study of my own hair. At the same time, I was growing it out. It's something that I can do when I'm feeling stuck. You know, if you're feeling kind of blocked, it's meditative. It's the same motion over and over again. I can do it while I'm traveling or when I'm bored. It's, you know, it's one of those things where I don't really have a plan for it. But each time it's installed, it's different. And I don't really know how big it's going to get. You know, I have to kind of take breaks because otherwise I end up with like claw fingers. So, you know, every now and then I will use it to fabricate a piece. You know, I sort of think of it as like, oh, it's getting a trim, sort of like my hair is getting a trim. But, you know, I'm like I said, I'm not really sure when I'm going to stop, but I don't know. I imagine like if it fills an entire storage unit, maybe, but I think that that's a long way to come, depending on how stressed I am, I guess. Whoa. My favorite. So yeah, what am I doing now? I'm here with everybody, and it's been great. I really am enjoying the Montserrat community a lot. It reminds me of my undergrad. But I'm also doing all of the things that I don't normally get to do, kind of. I'm doing a lot of writing, a ton of writing. So much writing. Writing for myself, but also writing for things like grants and residencies. I'm dreaming, thinking, reading a little bit, fighting the urge to constantly work. But, you know, more specifically, these are the things that are really like that I'm actively engaged in right now. So obviously, like I was saying, grants and residency applications, short story that I'm writing for an installation. I'm trying to plan a research trip back to Nigeria this year, so cross your fingies for me. The Spark retreat at the Steel Yard in September 2024. So Spark is this very fresh, recently formed organization with myself and some other BIPOC metalsmiths, people that work with metal, whatever you want to call us. We're planning a retreat in Providence. Hopefully it will happen in September. It's one of those things that, you know, black metalsmiths, brown metalsmiths are few and far between, and most of the time we only get to interact online. So we're trying to create a space where we are working together in person. I'm obviously making new work for exhibitions, an exhibition here next year, and then another one in 2026. But one of the things I'm really excited about is the Penland Special Program with Black metalsmiths in August 2025. It's something, again, that I was really adamant about changing within my community. Like, I used to lament about how there were no black metalsmiths around, and like, where are we? Why can't I find them? And I just sort of got tired of sitting around and complaining about it. And I reached out to people that I knew. I got less scared of asking people for things. And I reached out to Penland, and I said, hey, there are very few black people here. Why don't you try to do something for us? And they said, okay, well, we have these programs that we're running, residency programs, where we bring people in and sort of encourage them to work together in a space. And, you know, it's nice to come together, but also, what are you going to do for us financially? So they've worked with other organizations like the Wingate Foundation to, like, everybody who comes through that special program gets a $10,000 grant to go towards their practice. So that felt like a really special thing, like to be able to just ask for something and get somebody to do the hard work. Um, I'm continuing to build the Black Metalsmith database. It's something that I've worked on just so that we can connect with each other. Some other secret projects. One of them is here at Montserrat, but can't tell you yet. So, but yeah, I'm doing things that aren't actively like working in the studio, and part of that is because I'm here and like the opportunity that Montserrat has provided. Because for me, being an artist exists outside that space. Just because you don't see anybody, you're not. I don't know. Maybe you don't like doing that, but it's fine. Like doing these things makes me feel more well-rounded as a human being. And I want to be sure that I always have sources of interest and inspiration from my peers, my mentors, mentees. That means being engaged with the community through the teaching, research trips, residencies, anything. So that's what I'm doing right now. And as much as I want to live freely and like not plan anything, it's like I've come to realize that being as an artist, planning projects 2 to 5 years in advance is extremely helpful. And calendars are your best friend. So, because I don't necessarily have the studio setup that I used to, it's exciting for me because I get to work in ways that are different. So I'm changing the fact that I'd never really used to draw that much. But these are it's part of the things that I'm working on right now. I'm making a series of spoons for a spoon exhibition at Brooklyn Metalworks again. And I'm doing other things. So that's my talk. Thanks for coming. I brought some things to look at if you want to look at them after the questions. So, hang out for a bit if you have time. But yeah, I'm happy to take questions if you have any. Oh wait, this is the cool way to do it now, sorry. Wait, what is that? I don't know what that is. Oh, I thought you were like, give me money or something. Yes,
So
Ziggy.
in undergrad, what did you concentrate on? Were you doing things like this in undergrad, or?
Kind of. I was a sculpture major, but I don't know. I mean, I was like, oh, I love metal, but I also wanted to take a bunch of different classes. So I took a sculpture class was just generally like woodworking. I decided I wanted to carve stone, so I kind of like set that up for myself. I was making bread sculptures. I don't know. I did surface design, so like sewing, printing on fabric. I did printmaking. I did a lot of drawing. So, things that I felt like could help me be more like well-rounded.
Follow-up question: How did you get into blacksmith?
Oh man. Okay. So my undergrad metalsmithing professor, he's a metalsmith or silversmith / blacksmith, and I just really love metal. I love working with it when it's hot, when it's cold. I also happen to live at Memphis, where the Metal Museum is, and they offer internships. So I went to this thing that they have called Repair Days, and I was always just hanging out there. I did internships for like, I don't know, maybe a year and a half, even though it was supposed to just be one semester. And I just kept taking classes. Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Yes, Paul?
I noticed in a lot of the works that you've made, there's like, it seemed very intentional, there's like an interior and an exterior.
Mm.
And you talked about like talking or making sounds into
Mm-hmm.
form and the echo and stuff. But I was just wondering if the interior and the exterior is something that you are continually thinking about.
Yeah, definitely. And the most basic response is just like thinking about portals. Like even when I was an undergrad, I was exploring that idea of what exists in the spaces that we can't really see, or the spaces that are so, minuscule. But I was working with gnomes, and I was like, oh, you can see them, but you can't see them. And I don't know. But yeah, it is important, and it's something I want to keep exploring. Just gonna put it back on this one. There we go. Did you have a question, Jessica? Yes.
I just want to know how you ended up in the States. Like, was it just for school? If so, why did you choose the States? I'm sure that the whole living in London. So why not go there?
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, it happened that my parents, they applied for like a green card thing for us when we were kids, and I didn't know about it. I just figured I was coming to school here, and I'd go back after the 4 years. And I mean, we just chose it because it seemed like the best option. They had, like, the schools are more affordable, and my uncle was living in Texas, so you have to come here with somebody. It's always an uncle somewhere. But yeah, I ended up moving here, and then we got our green cards in the process. Very long story, and now I'm a citizen. So yeah, it was more just like, what's the best opportunity and the easiest, even though it took like 15 years. Yeah. Yes.
What made you choose to go to grad school? I think you said there were 8 years. Your
Mm.
undergrad and grad school.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought that I might go, but I didn't want to go just because I wanted to teach. I wanted to go for myself, and I felt like when I graduated, I was like 22 or 3, and I didn't know anything. So I was just like, I need to work, and then I was procrastinating, and then I was like, I'm turning 31, I need to do it now. So, yep. And I just needed to be a fully formed human, Yeah. Anybody else? Yes.
Did you feel like it was difficult to make that transition from the working world back to school after so long?
Yeah, it was, mainly because I was like, oh, I have to write papers again. I have to try to live on, well, I mean, I was already living on a budget, but it was just different. People tell you what to do, and I didn't have that for 8 years. So I was also working for myself before I went back to school. So yeah, it was kind of a hard transition. Do you have a question?
Yeah, it's kind of a broad question, but how do you stay organized with applying to grants and all these projects 2 to 5 years?
I mean, like I said, calendars help, but I just pretend to be organized. I have lots of notebooks. I think talking to mentors is helpful, people that, always just asking them questions, like what they do. But the way that I do it is to just, I was talking to somebody who said, oh, why didn't you make a vision board? And I was like, ugh, that sounds really stupid. So they were like, okay, how about you make a cabinet and think of it as a cabinet? And I was like, okay. So I have everything stored in that cabinet. Sort of try to think of, okay, these are the residencies I'm applying to this year. I don't know, spreadsheets are helpful. I have an exhibition spreadsheet. But it's very hard. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Are you thinking about doing things internationally? Well, I mean, technically, probably already are. I mean, outside.
My whole life is international. Sorry. Yes, I am. I'm always thinking, like I said, I want to go back to Nigeria and sort of start building a connection, like a link between artists in the diaspora and back home. But I also want to travel and do residencies anywhere. That's the best way to travel, especially there's a residency I applied for that's in Japan, and they're like, we want artists to rest. And I'm like, okay, pay me to come rest. So like I always just try to find those things, and you know, eventually somebody will say yes. Yep. Oh, I'll send them to you. Yeah, just make friends with people. Like that's another thing. You can, like when I do travel, I always try to meet up with artists or go to places that I think that artists can help out, and somebody will connect you someday. That's also why I went back to grad school, is to make connections, because it was very helpful. Yep. Thanks, everybody. I'm sweating a lot. Why am I clapping for myself?